Hello, thank you for joining us today for this Ask the Pet Food Pro session. This series of expert chats is brought to you by Pet Food Forum and the editors of Pet Food Industry, with decades of providing the market with pet food expertise. You can find our content at petfoodindustry.com. Ask the Pet Food Pro offers a great opportunity to connect with pet food industry experts and ask the questions that are most on your mind. Today's chat focuses on ingredients and their ability to promote health in pets and also to prevent food waste in the pet food industry. It's supported by Kerry. Thanks very much to them. Our experts today are Christy Shing, Business Development Manager for Food Protection and Preservation at Kerry, and John Minton, Business Development Director for Proactive Health at Kerry. Welcome, Christy and John.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Debbie. Hey, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today, both of you. We will start the discussion in just a minute, but first, a few announcements, please. You've all been muted to ensure everyone can hear and focus on the discussion. So please submit your questions in the chat box or comments. Some of you submitted questions beforehand. Thank you for those, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can today within the time allowed. And finally, this chat is being recorded. You can access the recording in about a week at petfoodforumevents.com. Just click on the Ask the Pro tab. Okay, so now let's just dive into the topic. We're covering two aspects of pet food ingredients today. So let's start with you, John, please. What are the biggest challenges manufacturers face when formulating new pet products?
Thanks, Debbie. So when formulating new pet products, really the key areas are delivering the nutrition to the pet. We are seeing a lot of trends where manufacturers would like to make the products more, what we say, kitchen friendly, more clean label. And to do that, you need to look at newer technologies. You need to replace older, more standard technologies or technologies that have been around with these newer technologies, so that you're one, making the product safe, two, you're making a stable product which will last throughout the shelf life, and three, really that the digestion and the good for you part for the pet will be there. So you're delivering products that will help with your pet's development from puppy into adulthood and into the elderly dog or cat. Other challenges which we are seeing is where functionality is looking to be added. So they're looking to add ingredients which help with these developments, be it vitamins, be it ingredients for joint health, for digestive health, that these are being delivered at the adequate level to the pets throughout that shelf life, that there are clinical backings for these ingredients as well. And when you add these, that you're guaranteeing the pet gets the dose of these ingredients that your clinicals have shown. And that's really, when you develop those products, that's you're trying to build kind of these functional ingredients into a food, making it safe and stable, but delivering that nutrition which the pet parent is buying the product for. So these are, some of those challenges which we see and which we deal with customers on quite a lot.
Right. And, we had a question come in during registration about, do you see the industry moving toward these healthier selections? So functional ingredients, for example, addressing things like digestive problems, cancer, allergies. And do you think that, veterinarians and pet parents are coming along in terms of their knowledge and education base for these?
So, yeah, so we're seeing a humanization of pet products, and that's driving, I think, a lot of the innovation out there. We've seen some data such as 94% of pet parents consider them to be a valued member of the family, and their health is considered to be as important as their own. And the number one concern with pet parents is healthy aging, that the pet lives as long and a healthy life as possible. And that's driving trends in various areas. We're seeing trends from digestive health, that they're looking to see if probiotics, prebiotics are in the product. joint health is a key area, because that's probably, as pets age, joints, they see issues with joints, from limping to not being able to get into the car or get up on the couch. And they want to maintain that throughout the life of the pet. But also cognitive is also key. And I'm talking about cognitive from a brain development, that they're seeing the pet develop fully. And the way I think we look at it, and when we talk to veterinarians, it's really that the right diets are given throughout the life stages of the pet. So from puppy through to adult, through to when they're older. And when they get these key nutrients, it sets them up with that base to have as healthy a life as possible. We've also seen, I mean, there are emerging trends which we see that's leading to this. I mentioned joint health, but brain health, but bone health and skin health are fast becoming very much a need and look out for pet parents. Again, it's on the healthy aging side, but skin health, coat health is very, very noticeable. Through them, they notice itching. It's generally a sign maybe of allergies that are starting from the food that they're given. And also, lastly, we see a key one is oral health. So bad breath is obviously an issue. If a lot of people have dogs, it's quite unpleasant. But if there's bad oral health, it causes tooth decay, loss, and that leads to issues with them eating and weight loss, and that leads into muscle loss as well. So it can speed up the aging process also. So I think it's generally trying to bring the humanization of maintaining a healthy diet, taking the right supplements, exercising to, if as a human you want to live longer, those are things that are recommended by all our doctors. I think vets recommend it also, and it's really to treat your pet as you would yourself. That's become a key trend.
Switching to the food waste side, Christy, do you see some of the same challenges playing in with food waste? Are there different challenges for pet food manufacturers in that area?
Yeah, kind of, going off on the humanization trend, pet parents are looking for more kitchen-friendly ingredients. But when you think about from a preservation perspective, what we traditionally see for preservation solutions, I think like a potassium sorbate, sorbic acid, and benzoate, etc. Those are always going to be cheaper solutions compared to your cleaner label kitchen-friendly ingredients. So I think one of the biggest challenges manufacturers are facing is how do you balance out the cost with everything that a pet parent wants? And I think these kitchen-friendly ingredients combined with some of the functional ingredients that John alluded to earlier, balancing that all to kind of deliver on all the consumer needs are going to be the biggest challenge here.
Can you please define what you mean by kitchen-friendly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we consider those that are ingredients familiar to the pet parents, ingredients you'd find in your kitchen cupboard, for example, think like vinegar or whey. So yeah, just things that, not chemical sounding ingredients like a potassium sorbate, for example.
That makes sense. Okay. Are you hearing from that parents are wanting to find easier ways to store food once it's opened? Is that playing into the food waste and preservation? And also, in terms of get the pet owners being able to give the correct amount and not worry about the rest of it going to waste.
Yeah, I think definitely, pet parents are looking for, easier storage or food that doesn't go to waste by the time they finish their, bag of pet treats, for example. I'm thinking about, semi-moist pet treats that you open a big bag of that you maybe get from Costco. And then by the time you get to the end of the bag, it's moldy. No pet parent wants that. No manufacturer wants that. And so I think, that's a big piece that, ingredient solutions can definitely help solve. That's something that processing or packaging materials won't be able to solve, because once you kind of open your bag, you're kind of exposed to the elements and have that level of ambiguity. But having an intrinsic hurdle of protection with an ingredient solution is able to help, give that extra, I guess, level of protection for both the manufacturer and the pet parent to ensure you're not giving spoiled food to your pets. I think, a big piece with, ingredient solutions is being able to extend that best by date, which is also increased added value for, not for minimizing food loss as well.
Yeah, that brings up another question. In terms of the best by date, is that how, is that the best way for treat and pet food manufacturers to communicate shelf life? I mean, that is what consumers are used to on their own food. So is that the best way? Are there other ways to communicate that, this is shelf stable and will be for a while, ideally?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the first thing that comes to mind, right? When you think about how to communicate food waste or whether food is safe to eat or not. And actually, in Kerry, we've done a lot of research on food safety behaviors in line with some of our food waste research. And we have seen that actually just updating the best by date isn't as impactful as one might think. We really see that consumers, which leads to pet parent behavior, it's really passed down generationally. So, just by updating the best by date, it doesn't really prompt the shift in behavior that's needed. So I think a great example of this is, think about if you have any examples of, your parents saying that, they keep ketchup in the cupboard, for example, and it's lasted years, we never saw any issues, so it's fine. But, when you look at the back of a ketchup package, it actually says keep refrigerated or use
Right.
within a month, for example. So I think, there's a big opportunity too, as we move into, trying to reduce food waste, increasing shelf life of pet products. There's a really great opportunity to use packaging to help educate the consumer. So really putting clear, indications of, for example, instructions once you open it, for example, keep refrigerated, seal tightly after opened. Once opened, use within, X amount of days. Or like, for example, as we move into like fresh food, thawing instructions, clear instructions to not refreeze once thawing. So yeah, very clear, intuitive instructions is really, along with best by dates, are really going to help drive changes in behaviors in consumers.
That makes sense. This is an interesting question that just came in. Are we allowed, and maybe this is a regulatory related question, but are we allowed to introduce a new pet food storage system? I mean, I guess maybe the way to translate that into this discussion is, are there things on the horizon that may be new and novel in terms of pet food storage, whether ingredient based or other?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is, the increase in like the fresh refrigerated food space. And I think that from a, preservation perspective, it really changes I guess, the game in terms of what we consider in terms of preservation. When we think about traditional pet foods like kibble and treats or retorted canned pet food, these are all very shelf stable due to processing, or they're tried and true low water activity products like kibble. But once we get into that range of fresh pet food, for example, you're looking at a higher water activity, which inherently increases your risk of microbial growth, not only just like molds or other spoilage organisms, but also pathogens, which is, then veering on the side of a food safety risk, which is non-negotiable. So, I think we're really facing maybe a new set of challenges that would probably require more innovative new ideas, especially on the ingredient innovation side, on how you tackle some of these new challenges just because of, a different matrix, a more high risk matrix, and then also, your shelf life targets or processing parameters are going to be substantially different compared to like a kibble or a pet treat.
Right. And in terms of, the question originally was, are you allowed? I mean, from a regulatory standpoint, what regulators care about is the safety of the finished product and also the safety of the environment in which they're created. So I think they're not necessarily regulating storage systems or regulating, the safety of the product, whether there are any microbes of present in the food or in the environment where it's created.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you mentioned a few ingredients earlier that have been traditionally used to help preserve pet food, and that you said are more or less expensive. What are some other ones that people might want to have on the radar screen or could be considering?
Yeah, I think kind of, going back to the whole the fresh space, both for raw and cooked fresh food, we're seeing a lot more manufacturers because of that higher microbial risk look to distribute products frozen. Refrigerated is also something that a lot of manufacturers are looking at, but on top of that, to provide that extra hurdle, we're seeing manufacturers potentially use HPP as well. And I'm seeing in the chat as well talking about raw pet food.
Mhm.
HPP is very common for raw pet food because it allows you to have that reduction in microbial load, but still maintaining the nutritional characteristics and organoleptic characteristics of your raw pet food, for example. But when we consider processes such as HPP, there are challenges associated with it just in terms of the cost associated. I think, given the overall higher risk nature for microbial growth in these processes, HPP, for example, we see a lot of blown packages due to the high pressure they're using, leading
Yeah.
to food waste on the manufacturer's side. But also, it's really protecting the food in a closed environment. So I think when I think about, a HPP'd product, and then you take it through the whole distribution process, for example, refrigerated, if there's any breaks in the cold chain, is there anything protecting the product, if there's higher temperatures than anticipated because it's not kept at full refrigeration temperature. And then once again, yeah, getting back to the consumer's end, once they open the package, say if they have a smaller dog that doesn't eat the whole package of fresh food, how do they know, or how do you guarantee on the manufacturer's end that it's not going to spoil or be at risk of, for example, listeria outgrowth once opened?
Right. And I know there's been research done, in the last few years over ingredients that can help ensure or help reduce or prevent microbial growth in even raw foods, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure those are really market ready yet or regular or approved
yeah,
um, from regulatory status.
absolutely.
Um, so switching a little bit, and we are going to get back into ingredients, Don. But speaking of ingredients with food preservation and waste, you know, can you talk a little bit, Christy, about raw materials and ensuring that they are safe, um, especially when there's no thermal treatment? I think this is if there's so for example, a person gave the example of like you're using products from restaurants that you would use in jerky. So like maybe
Yeah,
duck meat. Um,
yeah.
what are ways to help preserve those or prevent microbial growth without thermal process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really the overarching goal is, the hurdle concept. And, if there are people on the call who aren't familiar with the hurdle concept, it's the idea that you're putting multiple, I guess, hurdles or, I guess, yeah, preventative controls in place to ensure that you're making it more and more challenging for a microorganism to grow out in a matrix. So taking that same approach is, making sure you've got multiple preventative controls would be, to ensure that you're protecting the food. And so if you think about it from, like you mentioned, a treat perspective, um, when thinking about like a dry blend with like chicken meal and like other dry flour ingredients, ensuring that the specifications of those dry blends are, at a certain level of for like mold, salmonella, other just total plate count, so that you're not bringing in a significant microbial load to start off with. And then thinking about, your protein, for example, if you're using like a chicken or like a MSC chicken product, if it's coming in frozen, you know, don't, thawing it and then not putting it back in the freezer or using it within X couple of days that's been validated by shelf life. And then, yeah, just overall ensuring that products are processed and used accordingly, stored at correct temperatures. And then also making sure that there's just good GMPs in place at your manufacturing site, not introducing high levels of microbial count from like the environmental contamination side of things.
Right, right. Okay, this has been great discussion. Let's switch back a little bit more or pull it back a little bit more to ingredients. Specific ingredients. John, and this may be a question for you too, Christy, but what is transparency in terms of ingredient claims mean? You know, we're always hearing that consumers, pet owners want transparency, but you know, what do you think that means, and how do pet food and treat manufacturers put that into practice?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, it's using ingredients that are approved. Everything we use, and I think you'd say throughout the industry, in the pet industry, it's AFCO approved, so it's been registered, it's gone through all that approval process, and I think it's good. The consumers should know that and are educated that those ingredients are in their products. The other area we focus very much on is that if we're putting any ingredients from a functionality point of view in, that they are backed by clinical science. So there's clinicals that have been performed, not linking them from human side, but linking them to actual clinical trials in cats and dogs. And really, you need to call that out in your marketing materials and also on packaging, in terms of how, what benefit it brings, but also then link back to the ingredient on the label that's bringing that benefit to the dog or the cat. And you see that with, most suppliers out there are very good at that. It's making it simple. When you look at a label on pet food, it is, can be baffling. I mean, you could have 30, 40, even more ingredients on it, but it links back to the kitchen friendly. It's having ingredients that are easily understood and calling out what they do. I think that brings transparency. Having good website, good marketing material that the pet parent can go and check as to why am I paying $50 for this bag versus 30 for a bag that doesn't have any of this benefit for my pet. So I think that's a key part, that they understand why they would give this to the dog and what it's going to do, or cat.
Good point. And I think the AFCO, some of the changes that AFCO's been making, not only the pet food label modernization movement, but also just some of their ingredient changes are making them more, seem more kitchen friendly on the label, that, pet owners can be able to look at it and go, oh, I know what that is, instead of being a long chemical name. Vitamin B, they know what that is, as opposed to biotin or whatever the vitamin B is.
Yeah, and I think, and to add to that, I mean, if there are clinicals on the ingredients, having links to those publications, they mostly should be publicized on their websites. And also, I think another key area is that you're not putting an ingredient in just because it looks like it's doing something, that it's in at a dose that you've shown in clinicals. So, I mean, we see this a lot in the probiotic side, where they could have 5 or 6 strains of probiotics with no clinicals in there, but they're saying, yeah, this is good for digestive health. And I think that leads to a lack of transparency for pet parents also. They think they're bringing something to the pet, when in a lot of cases they mightn't be stable in the product. They mightn't be getting the product through these probiotics throughout shelf life. And this is just one example we see a lot. And there's no clinical backing of these strains. They look like a familiar strain, but there's lots of bifido out there, and there's the bifido that you see in human food are generally have strong clinicals behind them.
Right. This is maybe a little bit outside of the realm of the topic, but after the big melamine recalls in the 2007, 2008, a lot of pet food companies were really spending a lot of time and effort on where their ingredients were sourced. And I mean, I know there are still some companies doing that, but do you see that as being as much of a, is that something that to me, that's part of the transparency demand or concept, but do you see that happening as much? among your clients,
I
for
don't think,
example?
yeah, I don't, for us as a company, to bring an ingredient or raw material in-house, it goes through a huge check of, there's could be 30 to 40 documents that the supplier has to meet, where all these criteria are called out. They also get audited by us, and unless there's full transparency there, we won't work with them. So that's the key part, and I think most companies out there take that approach, particularly in the US with the new food safety. They're not new anymore.
Well, they're
FSMA,
not.
but that I think that change has happened, and anyone who's not doing that is, they're putting themselves at quite a significant risk. So that we do that. Any raw materials that come in, they're sourced, they are safe to use, and then that builds into how we formulate them. And we formulate them safely, as Christy was talking about, from a food safety point of view. So I personally haven't seen it, and I think it's if you're doing your due diligence with your raw material, with your quality, with your regulatory teams, you should be catching anything like that.
True, true. Do you see that different parts of the world have different definitions of transparency? Are you having awareness of that?
I would say, from what we see, it can really depend. I think the European Union, China, Brazil, who we deal with, they're very, very strict on claims and guidelines you can make, and I think rightly so. The US is pretty strict. I think AFCO has a big part of maintaining that, and I think when you get outside of those regions, it can become, particularly on the supplement side of not food, but on the supplement side, it can become a bit of a grayer area, I would say. But I think on food in most of the developed countries, it is pretty strictly followed. There is, I think, quite a lot of transparency. A lot of real developing countries I can't comment on, to be honest. I wouldn't have done a lot of business in some of them, so I don't know what it's like in those countries or regions. But from what I see with mostly say westernized countries, it is very strict.
Or developed pet food markets, right?
Yeah.
This may be, I'm not sure if this is a question more for you, John, or for you, Christy, but in terms of ingredients that help with controlling a high microbial, to help with any kind of microbial challenge, do you see the use of, or what do you think about the use of things like organic acids and some aldehydes?
Yeah, I can take that question. So in terms of high microbial load, thinking about organic acids, organic acids truthfully are, their mode of action is to delay growth and bacteriostatic effect. It's not going to be bactericidal like a heat process. And so, you're never going to see as much efficacy with an organic acid based ingredient when you start off with a high microbial load. You're starting off with a significantly more substantial challenge. So, when we work with customers on preservation, we always say we look at the whole picture. I think a great example we've always used on, the conventional side is, I think sorbate is, for manufacturers, a very well-known ingredient and very efficacious for, say, mold control. But like if you add in like 50% sorbate in your formulation, yeah, it's going to work, but at what cost of taste? So, I think it's all really balancing it out, and having that lower microbial load is going to help contribute to longer term success of your formulation. I guess it's just, like you're starting off with a higher challenge with higher microbial load. And especially for those, non-bactericidal antimicrobial agents or preservation solutions, including organic acids, you're going to struggle a lot with getting the target shelf life that you need. And I think maybe something to call out is that, there really aren't many antimicrobial agents out there for the use of food in both human and pet that are bactericidal. So I think, ensuring that microbial load is as low as possible, with other hurdles such as, consistent ingredient raw material specs and also GMPs are really critical to ensure you meet your target shelf life.
Are you familiar at all with the aldehydes?
The aldehydes, truthfully, are a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but I would say similarly, we'd be looking at a total hurdle effect to control for microbial growth as well.
So they may be one tool, but not the tool. Sounds
Exactly.
like. Okay. And this probably is both for both of you, but what are your thoughts about, which ingredients are viewed more positively or negatively? And that's probably coming originally from the pet owners, I'm thinking, but because of that and because of their marketing strategies, pet food and treat manufacturers might also, well, we know they do, that they will try to stay away from using certain ingredients. And can we go over some examples maybe of those?
Yeah, I can start off, and maybe John, if you want to jump in as well. So, kind of going back to positively perceived ingredients, increasingly are those kitchen-friendly ingredients we mentioned, like familiar sounding ingredients like vinegar, whey, sugar, salt, for example. Things you're going to find in your
Blueberries
kitchen
or
cupboard.
yeah.
Exactly, like extracts. I think chemical sounding ingredients are for sure viewed negatively in the realm of preservation. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really those sorbates, benzoates, other chemical sounding preservatives. But I think another piece to highlight is I think in the pet industry, there's the perception that there's sensitivity of certain ingredients. So we see a lot of manufacturers, have looked to avoid the use of ingredients such as corn, wheat, and soy. And I think that's perceived from like additional sensitivity of pets for those ingredients. So while maybe not viewed particularly like on the negative side, that's definitely a watch out. We've seen a lot of manufacturers have. They're asking us for ingredients that don't contain these raw materials, just so that they can make those claims out there, because there are pet parents that are looking to avoid some of these ingredients with additional sensitivities.
Perceived
Yeah, and
sensitivities.
Yep.
yeah, I'd say it's
Totally.
very similar, as Christy said, humanization. Debbie, what we're seeing is it's mirroring what we've seen on human food. So natural, no artificial ingredients, high sources of protein, high in fiber. Plant-based is, you see some of that coming along, but a call out that contains plant protein, or plant a source of protein like rice. No allergens, or allergen free, or low, or not having soy, for example, are some of the key call outs you see on the pack. Contains probiotics is obviously, is one that's been there for a while, or immune health ingredients. So it very much mirrors the trends I think we've been seeing on the human food side, where people are, being much more label conscious.
Right. Have we, I don't think we've discussed this, but do you see pet owners preferring certain ways to give functional ingredients to their pets and to meet some of those health challenges and benefits that they're seeking?
Yeah, we're seeing, I mean, the trends really are you see a lot in kibble, where you're able to add ingredients that survive the production process. So I think that's obviously a favored and easy way to do it, to give it to them as part of their daily diet. Sometimes we're seeing powders, toppers, where they can be added on top of food, be it a wet food in particular, where functional ingredients can be a challenge to add, such as probiotic, for example. It's very hard to put that into a wet food and not spoil the food. We also see, there's a lot of products coming along where they're looking again to add stuff like a broth on top of it. It could be, a UHT broth, but there's some ingredients you can have in that, which you're bringing flavor, but you're bringing that functional ingredient on top of it. So treats is another area. If you want to, if you're traveling, you want to give the dog something for immunity, immune treats is a great way to, give them a product that you feel will help protect them for that journey, or something that might have a botanical for anxiety, is another thing where it's easy to give them to them for a period of time. So there are multiple ways I think we're seeing it. I mean, I think it's there's a lot more, I think, available now to the pet parent in terms of ways to add them, and I think that's good in terms of it allows them access to it. In some cases, allows them to even add it to food they might cook at home, for example, and might be passing on to the pet, where they can add a sachet of a probiotic or a prebiotic onto that daily. So I think it's all gives more flexibility to the pet parent.
Now, you mentioned supplements earlier. I mean, obviously, well, I think a lot of people in the industry are aware that supplements are not the same as treats and that they're regulated very differently, but they are pet supplements are one of the biggest, categories for growth. So, how do you think those are playing out in terms of functional ingredients and how pet parents are using them and perceiving them?
Yeah, it's it seems to be kind of different in terms of how they're marketed. You see a lot more of it coming through online, particularly social media. Or another aspect we've come across is a lot of them are coming through the veterinarians themselves, where they
Mhm.
are selling them similar to what you see with a healthcare practitioner model. Veterinarians, a lot of them are recommending supplements. And veterinarians themselves tend to be pretty cynical group when it comes to it. So what they do recommend, is generally, I think they would believe in them. Um, they're not as strict they're from you have the NASC, but that's they what they do regulate is they're pretty strict in how to do it. But I think you don't have to use them is the issue. If you can go and do safety test yourselves or clinicals and then sell a supplement. So that's where that kind of gray area comes in from a regulation point of view. So you do see them out there. They are a way to, if the ingredients are clinically backed, a good way to give them to the dog. But I would say check with your veterinarian as well,
Sure.
on what they're giving, because some of them can have significant effects on certain breeds, or what you give a dog versus what you give a cat could be fatal to one or the other as well. So
Or
always tread carefully.
or possible interactions with medications they might be on.
Yeah.
And Christy, you touched on this somewhat, John, but Christy, from a food safety perspective, are there other issues with supplements to consider? I know, we mentioned NASC, that's a National Association of it's a National Association Supplement Council. Sorry, I'm kind of bloated, but NASC.cc is the website, and they have a certification process that I think a lot of companies are using, because that not only puts them in good stead with regulators, but it also is a way to purvey to pet owners and retailers that this is a safe product. But I mean, is there anything else to consider, Christy, that we haven't touched on from a food safety
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah, I'd say, supplement and pet nutrition and food safety aspects are really driven by similar aspects, which in this case is like pH and water activity. Those in general, in all aspects of food, both human and pet, and supplements are what really drives microbial growth. And so I think we see a lot of similarities in the supplement space. If a product is in a water activity or pH range where you are going to be seeing microbial growth, your challenges are going to be the same or similar depending on those parameters. I think a key piece to call out is that, like you mentioned, supplements are regulated slightly differently compared to foods. So, we see on the human side how supplements need to be validated for food safety and food quality are different compared to foods. This is really, primarily in the testing protocol, how you conduct a challenge study to validate your accelerated shelf life studies. So I think that's something definitely to be mindful of. But I think the details of that will really depend on your specific formulation, processing, packaging, and your manufacturing, I guess, what your company mandates in terms of quality standards and testing criteria might differ. So I think it's definitely, I think from a microbial standpoint, one of the best things microbiologists say typically are like, it depends. And I think this is also a great situation of it depends, even if you have a food and a supplement at similar pHs and water activities, depending on the processing, your format, the requirements from a regulatory standpoint, the validation might look a little different, even if the challenges might be similar.
Okay. And, speaking of the, it depends, the person who asked earlier about the organic acids had a follow-up question about, if that's not the best way to deal with microbial challenges and raw materials and you don't have a thermal process, is there a better way? Or is this it depends situation where it depends on the raw material, it depends on the environment?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it definitely depends. I know that depending on the raw material, different processing methods will be in scope. You know, definitely, once again, if thermal treatment is out of scope, I know for some dry blends, irradiation might be something that some of your suppliers might be looking into, or for potential raw materials that you're looking to overall control or maintain a low level of microbial load. Take like an MSC, for example, you might be bringing in frozen material. Freezing delays growth of microorganism growth, or looking at adding an ingredient preservative or preservation solution system earlier on in your raw materials to protect those as well, might be something to look into.
Because your point about the organic acids is that they don't really help if you already have a high microbial load. So maybe if you introduce them
Exactly.
early enough, there might be
Exactly.
some, but that would probably require some testing and
Exactly.
yeah, following through. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. We haven't discussed what has become a very important and big part of the industry, and for pet parents too, is that sustainability. So can either one of you speak to how important that is to pet owners, what some of the trends are these days?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sustainability. I mean, it's key for, I think, every company out there has a sustainability plan, and if you go to their website, and you're going to be able to click on it and find that out. I think pet parents, they when they look at sustainability, it's how they look at any other ingredient or any other food they buy. So you see the palm oil has a bad name, from its environmental impacts. When they look at ingredients that have potentially, or products that could have a high carbon footprint, products that aren't sustainably sourced or contain ingredients like that have a bad reputation, it can, I think, put them off. We ourselves, I mean, we have at Kerry have a very strong sustainability commitments. I mean, we are looking to be zero emissions or by 2050, and by 2030 to be 55% reduction in carbon emissions. We're looking to be 100% responsible sourcing for all our raw materials, and we're looking at a circular economy. We really want to, by 2025, have 100% of our plastic packaging being either reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And then also, we don't take anything in terms of, when we take raw materials, or we look for social responsibility, that the people who are working at those companies are being well looked after, that they're being produced. Again, to the sustainability criteria we look to bring. And I think when you look at a lot of pet foods out there, you see a lot of those call outs too. It's being mimicked. So it's something everyone's looking for. People are concerned about the resources that the planet has. There's a lot more people on the planet in the next 20 to 30 years. So raw materials are going to become much scarcer. So I think it is very important. And I think, that's why everyone is taking it very seriously and has a sustainability plan.
You say responsible sourcing of your ingredients, raw materials. You mentioned social responsibility, social welfare. What else is involved with responsible sourcing?
Yeah, we look at the environmental impact, as I mentioned. We look at the carbon footprint of where we're getting those materials from. Are we getting it? Do we have a large carbon footprint by bringing materials in from India, where we could potentially get them in the USA, and pay a bit more? We look at, as I mentioned, where they're being produced, what country is producing them, and how they I treat their society, and if how we as a company, if we're happy with dealing with products from those countries. We do audit, and our customers would audit us on it. Again, it's how the worker, the people who are producing the product, are treated. If it's coming from if it's an agricultural product, how is that being produced? Is it being, as I said, being produced sustainably? Is there fair pricing? Are they getting fair pricing for it? Is the communities that these products are being produced, is the money trickling into those communities to help develop them, especially in developing countries? Those are all things we take into account, and really any pollution, plastic, carbon footprint, wastage of energy, water treatment. We look at all those aspects now when we source raw materials or products, and I think that way it trickles down all the way to the producers to agriculture, etc. And it leads to an all round I think a product that people feel less guilty about, or won't feel guilty about buying.
Right. It's very complex, but it does involve a lot. So you mentioned that sometimes there's a trade-off with cost, to have a more sustainable, responsible ingredient or product. What about the play with health and nutrition? Are there trade-offs with health and nutrition, or do those, pursuing healthful and nutrition ingredients, does that help with sustainability, or how do those all interplay?
Yeah, a lot of the functional ingredients that we sell are produced by fermentation, so they're produced naturally. Again, when we produce them, or we work with someone to produce them, we are looking at their sustainability plan, how they're produced, what water, is there wastage of water, the raw materials that are going in, are they sustainable? And when we've looked at also some of the stuff like extracts we sell, our omegas that we sell for omega-3s, we do produce an algal one now, which is produced by fermentation. So that's cuts down on the amount of fish and fish oil that we're using, because that's a very it's becoming a scarcer and scarcer resource. So there is, I think, a responsibility to be able to make them safely, but also at a high standard, and at a sustainable standard, that you're not going to stay in business for long if you're relying on raw materials that aren't going to be available in the near future, or that are become too expensive as energy costs increase. So that's a focus we've had on it, on when we do launch ingredients, or when we are partnering to bring in ingredients that have functional benefits, that all those things are taken into account.
And Christy, from a food waste perspective, I mean, obviously, typically, if an ingredient is more sustainable, it's helping to prevent waste, or reduce waste. But are there any other things to know about that interaction?
Yeah, so I think preservation ingredients with the overall goal of extending a product's shelf life is directly tied to reducing food waste. So it's not just about the time or volumes of waste that are decreased, both on the consumer's end and on the shelf, but also food waste is directly tied to a carbon and water equivalent number. And then also, if you're able to increase that shelf life of a product, you're potentially also looking at being able to distribute your product further, for further nutritional reach to a wider range of customers or consumers. And I think one thing Kerry has really looked at from a sustainability standpoint is we developed a food waste estimator that's available for all manufacturers and even consumers to look at, how extra shelf life days can help increase your nutritional reach, savings in carbon and water emissions, and then also, your volumes of waste that you can, I guess, save from being wasted due to food spoilage. So I think that's a really helpful tool to really start quantifying the impact of increasing your shelf life to reduce food waste, and like the both direct and indirect impacts of that on your consumers.
How do people access that calculator? Is that on the Carry website or?
Yeah, it's on the Carry website. If you Google Carry food waste estimator, it should come up.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So one thing we have not, one area we talked about different kinds of pet foods, including raw ones with shelf-stable foods. One we did not get to yet, and this was a question that came in through the registration, was pertaining to retort sterilization. So typically canned wet food or maybe pouches. You know, are there any trends going on there in terms of sterilization and safety, Christy, that and what might be the future? I know, for example, I know that in some markets, including in the US, wet food, canned food has been growing as a category.
Yeah, absolutely. I think wet food or traditional, I would probably classify those as, traditional methods for processing processed pet food. And I don't think they're ever going to go away, or just because of the economics and convenience of it compared to newer innovative formats such as fresh and raw. I think what we will see is, leaning more in towards like the kitchen friendly ingredient statements, and then increased functional claims. I know John was mentioning kibble, people adding in more proactive health ingredients for addressing joint health, digestive health, etc. I think we'll see a lot more of that. But I think the short answer is I don't think these methods are going away just because of the convenience of it all. And when you look at the market today, majority of these pet products are still in these traditional formats. That being said, I think if you look, shift gears a little and look at kibble, as pet parents are becoming more conscious of, for example, delivering complete nutrition via their main meals, we have been seeing an increase, for example, air dried kibble. And I think an advantage of products like these, while I don't think they're nowhere near close to replacing traditional kibble today, just because of the cost and convenience of those traditional kibble products. We are seeing, an increase in popularity there because with air dried kibble and other similarly more, I guess, gentle heat processing formats, you're able to have higher levels of nutrient retention, which is, really tying into promoting overall health of pets by having a more, I guess, nutritionally retained product for pet foods.
Right. I mean, the question may have been stemming from, those traditional methods are proven to be safe.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason I think that they will probably never go away, because, there are verified kill steps, if you will, in with microbes like salmonella and stuff. And,
Absolutely.
not that there's never a problem, because there have been some recalls, but there, if the protocols are followed, those have been proven to be very safe and healthy for pets.
Absolutely. It's tried and true.
Exactly.
Yep.
So one area we haven't talked about, and this may be a good way to wrap up the conversation, is other species of pets. You mentioned dogs. I mean, I think we've sort of been talking mostly about dog and cat products today, but there cat food, cat treats are experiencing a surge in new product development. Are there any, from either you, Christy, or you, John, are there any things to consider about that? Are there any specific new categories of ingredients that are, better for cats that you're seeing? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit. And then also the second part of the question is, what about other species? So more, outside of dogs and cats.
I suppose we do work with both. I know we talk about dog a lot, and I suppose it's they are the biggest market.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yes, they are.
by a long way. We do work with with manufacturers for cat as well, and a lot of our ingredients from functionality side can be applied to cat. We're seeing like some trends in cat, particularly we're seeing is kidney health, and we've seen a lot of that coming along. It's an area we are looking at. I think we've to do more innovation on it, because they are very, very different to the dog in terms of their biology and how what they eat. They're obviously carnivores, so it's very different in terms of applying ingredients to them. On the large animal side, we have an animal health division that focuses mainly on the agricultural side. So they would work mainly with monogastric. We do a small bit of work with horses, and our ingredients, like some of our probiotics, are being used in horses, as well as in some cases some of our immune health ingredients. It hasn't, I would say, been a huge focus of us on the pet large animal side. Hasn't been a huge focus for us up to now.
That makes sense. What about smaller companion animals, so like birds, reptiles, small mammals? Is that something that you do much with, and do you see any particular ingredient trends in those, if so?
To be honest, we don't do much with it. No. Ingredient trends I've seen. I own a couple of guinea pigs. I don't see, they call out a lot of the similar things on those foods. I mean, they're very, but they mainly eat hay. So, it's all very, very different and specialized, and I'm afraid it's not an area we've really looked at. I mean, that can obviously change if we are approached by customers in that area, and we have stuff that could fit with them. But at this point, we're really a dog, and then secondary onto the cat side, I'm afraid.
Well, they are the largest part of the market, as you said. Although in some parts of the world, like in Europe, for example, I know that some of those other species are much more popular or are popular.
Yeah.
So by the way, Christy did put in the direct link in the chat for the Kerry Food Waste Estimator for everyone's knowledge. Thank you for that, Christy. And thank you both to John and Christy for today's discussion, sharing your expertise. I thought it was all very interesting. Thanks again to Kerry for their support. If you want to continue your learning on many other pet food industry topics, please watch for more Ask the Pet Food Pro chats coming throughout this year, along with our pet food industry webinars. Plus, registration is still available for Pet Food Forum 2024, and it's not on the slide, but Pet Food Essentials, which is a seminar the day before Pet Food Forum, and this year is focusing on treats. So there actually will be a session on treats versus supplements if anyone's interested. And then finally, we would greatly appreciate your feedback on today's chat. There's a QR code on the screen you can use. We will also be emailing a survey link, and we hope you will please use that to let us know what your thoughts are, good and bad, please. And then finally, just a reminder that the recording of today's chat will be available in about a week at petfoodforumevents.com under the Ask the Pro tab. And with that, we will wrap it up. Thanks very much again to everyone, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day or evening.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.